Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about a little bit of an interesting exercise. We went through the March Madness bracket that came out on Sunday as everything is starting tonight, and we went through and decided who would win on the football field. So who would win this incredible wild 64 team playoff if it were to play out on the football field. Always a fun exercise around this time of year. But now let's get back to purely football. Chris Sims recently released his new wide receiver rankings for this upcoming NFL draft, and they're a little bit interesting. I don't necessarily disagree with all of it. I think he has some legs to stand on some of his arguments, but at the end of the day, I have a very different ranking than he does. So let's start with his. He broke his up into the tiers that he normally does. If you haven't seen the quarterback one that we did, definitely go check out that segment because I agreed with those a little bit more than I'm going to agree with these. But he had three different groups that he separated these guys into. One being explosive wide receiver, one being no bust NFL ready, and then high end skill set. So guys that can do one thing or a couple of things incredibly well and can be used very effectively in certain situations. So let's start with the explosive wide receiver one group. The guys that he thinks are at the top of this class, he thinks are setting the pace, are actually two guys from the same school, two LSU guys. Malik Neighbors he has at number one, and then he has Brian Thomas at number two, which is definitely a hot take. I think there are a lot of people that would disagree with him there, but I understand what he's saying about Malik Neighbors because the ability to separate is unlike pretty much anyone else in this draft. He has unreal speed. He can essentially, whenever the ball's in his hands, he could definitely score a touchdown. And then Brian Thomas is an absolute physical freak. So I kind of get where he's coming from, although I don't necessarily fully agree. I think in his next one, he went no bust NFL ready, and those were just Marvin Harrison Jr. He was alone in this group at the number 3 position, lower than a lot of people have him, including myself, which I'll get into here in a minute. But he's definitely a no bust, I can tell you that. I think he's just remarkable. And then in his final group, the high-end skill set group, he had two guys, Roma Dunze, who has been a part of the big-time conversation among the top 3 wide receivers in this group. He has him at 4, and then Roman Wilson, he has at 5, the wide receiver from Michigan, who's an absolute tactician. So I fully understand where he's coming from with some of these. With some of these, I tend to not agree at all. So let's jump into what I would think and what I would do if I was making these rankings. Let's start with the explosive wide receiver one, the guy that he thinks is up top, the pace setter, I suppose, in this group of wide receivers. It's Marvin Harrison Jr. to me. I don't necessarily get much of an argument to not have Marvin Harrison Jr. in that spot because I've just have not seen a wide receiver like this in my lifetime. I think his physical build is near perfect for a wide receiver in this day and age. His catch radius is out of this world. It's second to none, definitely in this class, and would be probably top 10 to top 5 in the NFL right this second. He has great hands, is a really solid route runner, although that's probably the area of his game that he could use the most work. He does not struggle with that necessarily by any means. He's just insane. He's wildly talented. His physical ability just jumps off the page. I think he's definitely going to be the number 1 wide receiver off the board, and I think he should be. He is an absolute game changer for whoever drafts him because throw him wherever you want on the field, have him run whatever route you want, doesn't matter. The dude is going to make plays, and he's going to make a lot of them. So very excited to see what he can do at the next level because, man, is he a player. He can do insane stuff on the football field. And then the no-bust NFL-ready group, I have a little bit different of a ranking here. I have Roma Dunze at 2 and then Malik Neighbors at 3, and I think the line between those two is razor thin. I think Roma Dunze, in my opinion, might have the highest floor of any wide receiver in this class. I think he is absolutely perfect in route running. His hands are incredible, especially against tight coverage. If you look back at that Sugar Bowl game against Texas, he made some catches under very, very tight coverage that are not normal. He shows his hands very, very late, which makes it really hard for the corner to know when the ball is coming. He just does everything very, very professionally. So I think he is as NFL ready as anyone but Marvin Harrison Jr. in this group. I think he's just remarkable. And then Malik Neighbors, as I talked about earlier, a threat to score whenever he touches the ball. I think he's just remarkable. He will definitely go top 10, and whoever gets him, whether it's in the slot or outside, most likely in the slot for the majority of the time. You could throw screens, you could throw end arounds, you could do anything. As long as you get this guy into space, he's going to make some remarkable plays. So very excited to see what he can do and where he ends up, because I think that will have a big impact on his success at the next level. And then we have high-end skill set guys, and this group is entirely wide open to me. I don't think there's just two guys that fit into this category, but I think Brian Thomas is the one that kind of leads this group at wide receiver 4. I think he is very close to being a no-bust type guy, but his route running is something that definitely needs a little bit of more work. But at the end of the day, the physical ability is just off the charts. He is a freak athlete, has a huge catch radius, can do just so much stuff on the football field. You likely line him up outside most of the time, but he takes up a ton of attention, and there are a ton of safeties that will be playing over, worried about those 50-50 balls that he can bring down like really no one else. And then I have Adonai Mitchell there at wide receiver 5. I think his catch radius and hands are just out of this world, other than Marvin Harrison Jr. and maybe Brian Thomas, but Adonai Mitchell might have Brian Thomas beat in catch radius because his is out of this world. He can make every single play. If you put the ball near him, he's probably coming down with it. It's just insane. That touchdown he had in the Sugar Bowl against Washington was just out of this world. So I think that's someone that fits in right around the 5 mark. I think this is where it gets kind of murky. There are a lot of different rankings for these guys, but I would go Keon Coleman right up there with him. Xavier Worthy, another guy. I think I would put Worthy at 6 likely. His speed is just out of this world. I don't understand how a team could pass up on him. I think if he gets the 32 and guys like Adonai Mitchell and Brian Thomas are off the board, I think it's very likely that Andy Reid and company take a chance on Xavier Worthy and just use his speed the way they use Tyreek Hill's speed and just let him fly down the field, and Patrick Mahomes will likely find you. Then we got Keon Coleman, someone who has just tons of physicality, could be a huge red zone target for a team. I think he's someone that will definitely surprise some people. Not necessarily the fastest guy in the world, but you don't necessarily need to be when you can make the catches that he can make in traffic. So big fan of him. Troy Franklin is kind of the Xavier Worthy way of things, just absolute outright speed. Could be a huge gadget guy until he kind of develops into that more complete receiver role that I think he's more than capable of being. And then Ladd McConkey I have in this group. I think he is an absolute tactician. His route running is downright perfect. It's really hard to find a problem with his route running. It is just incredible. His hands are awesome. He has a ton of shiftiness after the catch, so really like this guy. And I think overall this wide receiver group is just out of this world. I think they can do so many incredible things, and there are tons of guys that I just went through that I think are going to be immediate impact guys at the next level. And there's still guys that absolutely could jump into that group early on in their career because there's so much talent deep in this class. Xavier Legette, the guy from South Carolina, is just the size and speed combo from this kid is just insane. It's kind of a Brian Thomas, Adonai Mitchell type vibe where the dude can fly, but he'll run you over as well. So I think he's someone that a team could definitely fall in love with. Had a great pro day at South Carolina's pro day, and I think he's someone that could shoot up the boards depending on what these teams need and how quickly the other wide receivers go off the board. Another guy, Malachi Corley from Western Kentucky, is an absolute beast. I think he's a little bit under the radar, but could be a perfect slot receiver for anyone who needs him. Has great hands, great route running ability. I think he is someone that some team is going to fall in love with, and whether it's the 3rd round or the 4th round or maybe even the 2nd, I think he will definitely come off the board a little bit earlier than people might be expecting. And then Roman Wilson, I would have a little bit lower down on the list. I know Chris Sims was very high on this kid, and I think he's a great route runner. He has elite hands, is obviously a very smart player, but I think he's just a little bit lower on the bar, especially when it comes to physical ability, comparative to the other guys in this group. I think there's insane talent in this wide receiver group. I've talked about it a number of times on here, but this is the best wide receiver group I've seen. I think there is a ton of remarkable talent here. I think there's guys that do it different ways. There's different body types. There's different fits. There's tons of different ways you can fit a guy into your offense. So there's I bet there's 32 different rankings of these guys, 1 through 10, because some people need a ton of slots. Some people need outside receivers that can make contested catches. Some guys need red zone threats. Some guys need gadget guys. So there's tons of different abilities here. There's tons of different fits here, and I think it really bodes well for this class because there are so many teams that are going to need wide receivers that there could be 5 or 6 wide receivers go in the first round and then another 3 or 4 in the second because, as we know in the NFL draft, when a couple of guys at a position start to go in quick succession, teams get a little bit nervous and they start to worry that they can't get the guy that they want when they have that pick. So maybe they trade up, maybe they take someone a little bit earlier than they're expecting. And I think this wide receiver group could absolutely force their hand. If Brian Thomas were to go, I think 18 likely is his falling mark, is usually where I've seen him in some mock drafts. If Adonai Mitchell goes between 18 and 32, you could very well see Xavier Worthy at 32. You could see Troy Franklin at 32, Keon Coleman. You could see any number of guys. But honestly, I don't see a reality where you don't see 5 wide receivers at least drafted in the first round. I think if Brian Thomas will go in the first round, I feel very confident about that. And then if Adonai Mitchell is on the board at 32, I don't think the Chiefs take that chance. I think they definitely take him and keep it moving and definitely build out that wide receiver group that Patrick Mahomes has been making up for a little bit in the past couple of years. So I think at the very least you'll see 5 guys go in the first round. You will see tons of wide receivers come off the board that a little bit later that you might not know the name of or you might not know the school he went to, but you'll know his name pretty quickly because there are tons of guys in this group that will make immediate impacts on their team and will be huge difference makers. So very excited to see what this wide receiver class can do and very excited to see where all of these guys go because some of this is fit specific. But it'll be really interesting to see how all of that breaks out. But we're going to take our second break here. And when we come back, we're going to talk about breakout players in 2024. We've done a couple of these on the offensive side of the ball before, so this is part 3. So if you want to go check out the first 2, definitely do that. But we will be right back after this with some awesome breakout players for next year.